This episode is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Whether you love true crime or comedy, celebrity interviews or news, you call the shots on what's in your podcast queue. And guess what? Now you can call them on your auto insurance too with the Name Your Price tool from Progressive. It works just the way it sounds. You tell Progressive how much you want to pay for car insurance, and they'll show you coverage options that fit your budget. Get your quote today at Progressive.com to join the over 28 million drivers who trust Progressive. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Price and coverage match limited by state law.
Hey there, everyone. Welcome back to Real Estate Real and Unscripted with Nicole. Thank you for joining me. I'm excited to have you guys here this week. We are in studio with Drew Monaghan, who is with Private Exchange Group, and he works in the world of 1031 exchanges. And we're going to speak today about what that means, how you can use those, and for anyone who doesn't even know what that is, it'll be a great eye-opening session about things that can really benefit you or anyone you know who may need such a service. So welcome, Drew. Thank you so much for having me, coming here and being with us together.
Thank you so much for having me, Nicole. I really appreciate it.
So tell us a little bit about yourself.
So I've been in Florida almost 25 years now, something like that, since 99. Came from New York, originally from Philadelphia, and been in 1031s for 22 years at this point, yes. Married, I have 5 kids.
Oh my.
Yes, you're mine and ours, so we have a few. And the last 2 are actually just finishing high school, so it's kind of an interesting time at our house, yeah.
Yeah, nice. So you said you were in this for 22 years. Yeah. What did you do before that, and what took you into this space?
Fair enough. I was in sales for most of my career, but I didn't want to be in sales, though, because I had bad experiences with salespeople, right? So I realized that all the jobs I had were always telling me that I'd be great at sales. And I realized what part of it they kept thinking I was good at was relationship development. Meeting people and having that kind of conversation with somebody, getting to know them and fitting their needs for whatever I was offering or what we could help them with, right? So that really came full circle when I got the job as 1031 agent, because I had just got my real estate license in 2001. And somebody approached me and said, did you ever think of doing 1031s? You know what they are? And I go, yeah, but what do you mean do them? You either do it or you don't do them, right? Because we covered it in real estate school for like 5 minutes.
Everything covered in real estate school was covered, really, which is why I'm doing this podcast.
Exactly. But there's so much more to it, like a lot of topics, right? Yeah. But the more I found out about it, I was like, you got to be kidding me. This is fantastic. How come I just heard about it? And yes, sign me up. Yeah. So that's kind of how I got into it. A headhunter called me up and I wound up working with that.
So did you do real estate at all?
I did not. I actually got my license because I was going to be an investor. I moved from New York. And I was looking at doing investments, and I said, wait a minute, I'm reading these contracts. Why don't I just represent myself and save on the commission, maybe stuff like that. But it never really worked out that way. I just didn't wind up doing that full time. I kept my license, but it wasn't a calling for me, if you will. Right?
No, for sure.
So I found this when I was doing other jobs as a salesperson, a sales manager. I've been vice president at different small companies, larger companies, stuff like that. But when they approached me with this, something just clicked. The way the headhunter explained it to me, and the more I found out about it, the questions I asked, the answers I got back, I was like, you've got to be kidding me. This is like, one of those things that just clicked for me.
That's good.
Yeah. And it kept me being a student of the business. That's why I've known so much. You know what I'm saying? Because it wasn't work. It was like,
and it's ever changing. Things like with me in real estate, I love it. And I've stayed, 12 years now because it's ever changing. That keeps it interesting. It's, you're learning new things, changes, you have to stay on your feet. So yeah, being a student all the time.
Well, plus if you're a people person, which you are, I am, right? We like to learn about what people's needs are. And you do that in any kind of sales environment. But I like the relationship side where I take somebody from A to B. They're just like you do. They're at A, they're trying to get to B, whatever that means to them. We provide a service that helps them get there easier, less taxes, which we can get into. But to me, it just resonated for me as something that was really interesting. It's one of those things, right?
22 years later.
Yeah, exactly right. So it's been a fantastic thing.
So I'm very big about leveling it up, changing the game, being different, doing things at a higher level, and being unique and different.
Right.
Changing things. What would you say makes you unique, working with you in this space unique?
Oh, great question. Thank you. I think one of the big things is when I first joined the company I was hired to do, I thought I was the last person in the game. Right? Everybody already knew about this. It's going to be a pricing thing like I was used to in other bigger company scenarios and stuff like that. But what I realized was I kept getting asked to do training, kept getting asked to do education. So I'm thinking to myself, okay, yeah, no problem, I'll do that. But I kept trying to do the job of business development, selling, whatever. And I started realizing that, wait a minute, there's a big need for that. Like people don't know about this. They never deal with it every day. A lot of people don't even know about it. So I actually changed my intention at that point years ago to focus more on just training people, starting with realtors first, because you're on the front lines, you're dealing with clients that have needs and stuff, and they don't know about it. And they'll go, well, how come my realtor didn't tell me? I'm like, well, it's kind of a tax situation. You can't expect your realtor to.
I expect the realtor to know everything. That's why I'm
exactly
doing this.
Right. No, but you know what I'm saying, right? In all fairness, of course you want to know about it. But the reality was I started realizing that resonated with people. And the more that I did those training classes, the more I liked doing it and the more responses I got from people like, wow, I didn't know about that. I didn't know you could do this with that. I didn't know that. That gravitated to more in the strategy conversations and the options that people have, not just A to B, you know? And that really not only rang true with me and furthered my passion for it, but it really resonated with the clients. So that's the differentiator, is that extra piece that anybody could look this up on the internet and find out what it is, right? Now more than ever, right? So AI and stuff like that. But there's nothing on the internet that really customizes per client scenario. Right. There's a lot of similarities, but they're not exactly the same. There's a bunch of variables, just like anything that could affect which way you go, right? You deal with that every day. So that to me is one of the differentiators that I love doing, and people really resonate with that with me, definitely.
No, and I love that about you because I'm very training based and education based, and that's kind of how I feed my soul. And the whole purpose of why I'm doing this show in the first place was to just offer all these things that people don't know about, that, you know, not just the sales-based real estate, sales-based business stuff, because there was that gap there. And I think, you know, like you said, people don't know. I've come across so many sellers that are like, oh, we're going to sell this property. I'm buying another place, or I bought another place. And I'm like, do you do a 1031 exchange? Like, what's that? And I'm like, oh, okay. So here, and then, you know, they learn and they know. And I've had people who've sold and they messed up and it was too late and that was it. And they're like, oh, well, the money, you know, I'm like, oh, the money, no, like, that's it. Right. Yeah. So we'll kind of talk through that. But that's awesome. Training and education is everything, and knowledge is really power. So I like that. So tell us, what is a 1031 exchange?
So there's the technical answer, but then there's the more realistic, easy to understand, fun answer. Let's just say that. What I like to tell people is it's like playing Monopoly for real. Mm. You know, the game Monopoly, everybody knows that, it's internationally known, right? Yep. But if you think about the game, it kind of teaches you basic real estate investing. It came out in the 1930s around the Depression. So it taught hope, right? And some people have very visceral reactions to that. Some people love it, some people hate it. But the idea is they get the concept of it. And what the concept is, if when you get to your 4 greenhouses on a property, you can swap that for the hotel. Mm-hmm. Why do you do that? Because you're little like little red hotels? Maybe, but really because it makes more money in the game. Now, it's very simplified in the game. It doesn't cover every aspect of the real world, which it's not supposed to. But that right there, it kind of a great explanation of what we do. You're swapping one property or more, doesn't matter, for others. And by doing that, you don't have to pay the taxes on the sale of that, the profits or the gains, they call it, right? Because you're reinvesting all the money. Mm-hmm. So if you think about it, if you sell a property, let's say for $1 million net after your closing cost, and then you reinvest the $1 million, you didn't put any money in your pocket, so there's nothing to tax you. So it's part of the tax code, the United States tax code, section 1031. That's where the numbers come from. And it's been the tax code since 1921. It's not a loophole. It's not some kind of a obscure thing for just certain people or certain socioeconomic backgrounds or certain types of investors. It's for any taxpayer anywhere in the world. They don't have to be a citizen even. I mean, it's just, it's basically for it's the ability to update your assets, your portfolio, strengthen it without having to pay the tax every time you make a move. So as you're moving your pieces around the monopoly board, so to speak, right? Every move you're looking to make it better, right? You're getting out of this property for whatever reason, it's not working for you. Good, bad, or indifferent. Maybe it's a partnership. Maybe it's had its time. It doesn't really matter the reason, but it's not working for you. You want to get into these property or properties over here because that's better for you. Could be income like a monopoly.
Could be location.
Exactly
you want to, you're moving to Florida from California and you don't want to have to be a landlord in California.
I can't take my properties with me.
Yep.
Right? It could be leverage. I'm at a $300,000 condo, a big condo fees and stuff like that. I can't make it work on a rental side anymore.
Right.
I want to trade up to $1 million property, right? I finance the difference. I put that down. There's one example. It could be diversification. I don't want all my eggs in one basket, right? I don't like, because if something happens to this one property, I have no income. Or the opposite, I don't want all my eggs. I want to go the opposite. I want to diversify, right? Or the opposite of that, or I consolidate. So there's two. So consolidate means I have all these properties. It's too much to manage. I'm running all over the place. Consolidate into one, like a multifamily or higher density unit, or the opposite of that. So that gives them the option to solve problems based on where their scenario is. And that to me is the fun part of the job. I'll sit down with clients back on the way in. Same thing is they're at here. Tell me about this, just like you do. Tell me what's working with this property. Tell me why you're selling it. What you're looking to do. What's your goals? That's how the same conversation we have. And then they go over on the other side, say, well, here's what I want to be, right? And that helps them guide through what makes sense for a 1031, which I'll get into some specifics. But from a concept standpoint, it gives them relief.
Yeah.
Because if they're stuck in this one, for whatever reason, again, it doesn't matter, right? Like relocation, you can't take your properties with you, right? I don't want to be not near my properties, for example, as most people would say. Gives an opportunity of, okay, we're going to relocate that too. We're going to sell those and rebuy over here, right? Yeah. So then that works in well with all the other services provided, especially realtors. You're definitely on the front lines with that, Nicole, because they need your help from the market stuff that you do, the days on market analysis, to what works in that kind of a property for the rental side.
Right. So like days on market. So let's talk technical and get a little deeper.
Yeah.
So, you can give an example or maybe however, but how does it work? What are the technicalities of this 1031 exchange?
Perfect.
Because there are timelines and dates and things that need to follow suit.
Exactly right.
You're done.
No, fair enough. So with anything with the IRS and the government, they have rules to follow to do this, right? They don't just let you do it without some structure. So first of all, the closing date of the sale starts a clock. You have 180 calendar days to finish whatever purchase closings you're going to make. One or more doesn't matter. But you only have the first 45 days of that period to finish your shopping. They call it
identify the property.
They call it the identification period, right? We call it the shopping period because that's your shopping has to be done by then.
Right. So identify it, put it under contract.
We recommend that, but they don't require that. They literally
you'd want to ideally to put it under contract because you might have liked that property and then 2 days later you don't have it anymore.
And there's the real world example.
Right,
perfect.
Right.
That's why we transition them from the rules to the real world. Perfect answer. Because that makes sense, right? So and our role as an intermediary is they can't touch the money, right? So when they sell that property, the money has to go to another escrow account. So you have escrow for the sale, right? We set up an escrow for the deposit, for the proceeds from the sale. And then we send from that escrow account to the escrow for the purchase, right? So that's where the intermediary comes in. We're actually joining two transactions together. We hold the money, send the money from that. So think of us as an escrow account holder as well.
Right.
But more to that. There's documentation we have to prepare for every closing, right? Sale and buy, we have to have instructions and also some minor changes to the settlement statement, little things like that.
I just did one yesterday.
You got it.
On my listing. It was my listing. The buyer was buying it as a 1031 exchange.
Excellent.
And the guy called me. He said, we might have a delay. They had to fix something on the paperwork with a 1031 exchange. And we didn't. We closed. All was good. Funded this morning.
And that's what's funny you say that because we like to look at it where it doesn't delay.
No, it didn't delay.
And that's good to hear that.
No, it didn't delay. It was just something I think they had some technical thing. And we closed real fast. That was the other thing too. So it did close real fast. So
fantastic.
I gave them,
We actually recommend that. We don't want our process to slow up any of the transactional stuff because there's so much involved, as you know, with that.
Yeah.
It could be banking, could be mail-aways. Right. People have deadlines on their own, moving stuff, all that kind of stuff there too. A couple other things about the process though is it can't be for just any real estate. Let me back up. Any type of real estate is exchangeable for any other type of real estate. So whether it's commercial, residential, or land, doesn't matter. What matters is about the usage and the money. Yeah. Exactly. So money's easy, right? So if you sell a property for a net of $1 million, let's say after your closing costs, right? And that's net sale price, not net cash, just net sale price, right? Then you have to reinvest that $1 million into another property or properties. One or more doesn't matter, right? So that's the easy part. Now, the interesting thing about that is we talk in whole numbers in conversation when we're giving scenarios, but in the real world, with closing costs, it's not a whole number like that. It could be like 999,000, whatever, or 101, something like that, right? So to match that to the penny is not realistic. Usually we tell them to think about it as a target number. So if you sold around $1 million, whatever that number is, that's your target spend. If you go more than that, you bring the difference. If you go less than that, you pay tax on the difference. We have another concept we call touch money, pay tax, right? So if you sell and touch money goes in your pocket, it's taxable, right? If there's tax on that. So that's kind of the goal on the money side. The usage side is pretty straightforward too. You have to be using the property to make money. Now, they don't say it like that in the code, but they say use it as an investment, which means if it's rentable, they're going to be looking for rental income, or you're running a business out of it. Or if it's land, you don't have to rent land out. Right. So business, right? Business properties definitely could be for a 1031.
You're running a business out of it, or you could use it as a property that you rent to someone else running a business out of it.
Yeah. I mean, they don't mandate occupancy or rental rates. They're not going to come back and say, well, Nicole, you did a good job, but we want you to charge more rent. They're not going to say that.
Yeah,
okay?
yeah.
But they want to show, you want to show on your tax return a consistent pattern of what an investor with the investor hat on would say, I'm renting that property. Well, an investor wants to rent it for as much as they can, for as long as they can, obviously, right? So they're going to be looking for activities to make sure that checks that box.
And that's after the fact.
Correct.
Like they audit you after, or how is that looking?
Great question.
Yeah.
People think they're going to get audited when they do this. It's not something that triggers an audit typically. If you're going to get audited, God forbid, you're going to get audited for whatever reason. Okay. However, if you happen to have done a 1031 in the year that they audit you, they're going to go there first because they're very easy to audit. You have time frames, you have movement of money, you have usage of the property, as we talked about. So it's very easy for them to check enough boxes to make sure that was a good exchange, right?
Do they give you any timeline of how much time before you rent it out? Let's say you buy that commercial property and it's godforsaken in the end, and then you don't get a tenant in there and it's just hanging out. Just kind of like when you buy a property with a conventional loan, you have to be in it before 60 days. So
it's a great question. And what's interesting about this is they don't, if they even look at this, it won't be for a couple of years, God forbid, they get audited, right? However, what they're looking for is the intention, right? We call it intent to rent. Very simple concepts, right? So if you buy a property and you have to fix it up before you can rent it, they're not going to expect you to rent it out while it's being fixed up. So some properties might need extensive renovation, right? So if it's 5, 6, 7 months or even a year with no rental income, you'll have activities on your tax return to back that up, right? You're going to be saying, hey, it took us a year to renovate, whatever. But you want to be able to be expedient with that. So as soon as you could, you're going to show intent to rent. So you're going to have it on the market for rent. You're going to put an MLS for rent. You can put a sign on the property, social media, whatever. Show intention. And we would tell clients to make sure you back that up and put it in a folder. Because if they ever question you, say, here it is right here. Here's the proof of our intention, right? What you don't want to do with that is to move into it. It's not for primary residence. And it's not for flipping properties. When people say, well, wait a minute, Drew, that's an investment, right? I'm not going to live in it. I bought it, fix it up, and sell it. Well, the reason why that doesn't work for a 1031, and they don't tell you this, but over the years being that student I was mentioning, I figured it out why. It's because when you treat real estate like that, meaning at flip, you're treating real estate like inventory. And any inventory that's sold, whether it's phones, desks, computers, is taxable. Imagine if Apple or one of the major manufacturers didn't pay tax on your inventory, right? So that it's almost like a car too. A car could be on the lot for a year and they didn't sell it. Well, I've owned it a year and a day and that's a long-term asset now. Yeah, but your whole intention was it's an inventory item. Right. So you have to pay tax when you sell that.
Right.
So those are the two things. So we use some benchmarks like a year and a day of ownership before you sell it, be the first benchmark. Or we say better have it 2 years before. Yeah. They don't holding periods, Nicole. They don't come back and say, well, I'll tell you what, as long as you rented it for 6 months, you're good to go. They don't do that. They just look at the activity and what it leads to. The way my attorney explained it to me, it's like checking boxes. The more boxes you check down that path, the stronger that path is.
So with the intention, right? So if let's say someone had a rental property that they were renting out for 4 or 5 years, then they sold that rental property, did a 1031 exchange, bought another one, rented it for 3-4 years. And then somehow along the way, husband and wife got divorced and wife moves into the property and it's whatever it is. What happens when you then take it from the investment to a primary residence?
You can definitely do that.
And is there a timeline and is there where does the tax catch up with you once you convert it?
Great question. And what's interesting is the bigger picture in that is they're not trying to tell you how you can use your properties. Okay. You can use your properties any way you want. It's your property. okay, your company's property, whatever the ownership is. However, they probably do a 2-year look back when you do a sale, right? Because that's the only time we're talking about this, when you're selling an asset that has a taxable event, right? Has tax potential. If you're changing usage over the years, it doesn't really affect anything per se because you're not selling it. There's no tax potential hit, right? If you think about it, right? But here's the thing. If you're selling it after you've been in an investment, we like to use, again, a safe mindset or a benchmark would be 2 years. So the last 2 years before you sold it, what was your usage is what I'll ask the client. And back it up with their CPA. For us, we're always pitching teams, right? CPA does this, realtor does that, mortgage person does that. So you always have different aspects of professionals, just like you deal with, right? That'll help them out. In that case, it'd be the CPA. They say, okay, in the last 2 years, what was the usage as reported to the IRS? Not what you think you did, but what does it report to them? And sometimes they'll have to go to their CPA for that, which is fine.
Right.
To your point, if the last 2 years, one of the owners, in this case, the wife or the ex-wife, moved into it, it's now her primary residence. So if she sold that, it'd be subject to whatever the primary residence advantages would be. In this case, unless they change it, it's the homeowner's exemption.
Right.
I mean, the first $250K, if she's single at that point, is exempted from any kind of tax.
And if you used it 2 out of the last 5 years of
primary residence.
Primary
so that would be
residence,
the case, right? So that's where we look that back. Now, if it's before that, let's say it's a year she moved in, could be a gray area there. And that's where you talk with the CPA to see what they're comfortable with.
Yeah, no, it's very interesting because it's like, oh, could you potentially then convert something that had that much longevity and potential gains that in the IRS code, and you're not the CPA, but I was just curious how that touched on it because I had someone who was kind of looking at that recently.
That is normal stuff. That's a good question because people deal with that. They deal with people that split up, whatever reason doesn't matter. They might run out to the point where this was our goal. Now we're going our separate ways.
Or it was originally their house and then they rented it out for a bunch of years and then someone moved back in and, interesting kind of how like where they mark and the basis and all that. So I'm going to have my accountant on the show as well. So we'll go through some of that too.
I love this because most people don't think about this until you have to.
Yeah.
And sometimes we'll talk about mistakes that can happen. Sometimes they ask the questions too late.
Yeah.
Once you sell and close, you touch money, you pay tax. You can't go backwards.
Speaking of backwards. So you and I were talking about a backwards situation that I learned, right? So speak to a little bit about that conversation we had of like the standard, typical way of doing a 1031 exchange and then the reverse.
There's a reverse exchange,
So what is a reverse exchange?
So we just jumped into the advanced class. Well done. Awesome. Well done. Very comfortable. I love that. So a lot of times when you're trying to make things happen, remember back to the A and B conversation, right? Sometimes it's better for somebody to buy something first.
Yeah.
Okay, let's say the inventory came up and they've been dying to get this one property. Yeah. They don't want to lose it. They have to close and they have the ability to close before they get the proceeds from the sale. So in that case, they're reversing the order of the transactions in our world, right? So now they're buying first. That's a reverse exchange where you're buying something before you sell. You're just reversing the order. It's a little bit more involved than a regular exchange because you have to have the money.
You have to have the money.
Right? And you can get loan to get other assets. You get a loan against the property or you have cash, whatever way you want to do that. And that's first thing that's obvious. But the second thing that most people don't realize is if you're going to do an exchange with that and the one you're going to eventually sell, you can't go untitled to that purchase that you just want to make.
Yes.
And you say to yourself, well, wait a minute, what are you talking about?
Right.
How could that be? Well, it's because you can't exchange with yourself. Because let's say you do come up with the money, you want to buy this thing, it's a great deal for you, and you make that happen. And you take title to it because you didn't know. Okay, because most people would not know, right?
Yeah.
So you take title to that property. Now you say, okay, I want to do an exchange with this sale happening. Well, when that sells, you can't put the money towards a property you already own.
Right.
You can't exchange with yourself.
True. Yep.
So most people don't realize that until somebody explains it to them because it doesn't seem like it's a big deal, right? In their world, it definitely is a big deal because an exchange is basically relinquishing one property, replacing with another. So it's a deed swap. Just not a direct swap. Direct swap would be you and I swapping deeds with each other. That could still happen. But most of the time you sell to whoever you want to and you buy from whoever you want to. It gives you maximum flexibility and many options, right? Well, in that case, you're relinquishing title to the sale and you're acquiring title to the buy. There's the exchange, right? Well, when you do the reverse and you don't have the exchange set up with the exchange company like us or intermediary first, and you take title to that, now that can't be in the exchange anymore. So imagine you did that. And then you go to sell this guy over here. Yeah, how much time do I have on that sale? oh, I'm going to put it towards a property I already own. I just had that happen. A very high-end property.
Really?
Yeah, over the summer, actually.
So before they got with the intermediary, they did that on their own?
Because most people wouldn't realize it.
Yeah.
How would you realize it? I'm just happy I was able to find the deal and make that purchase. How would I know? Most people wouldn't know that you have to have a certain thing set up with a 1031.
Right.
So what we do as an intermediary, we also act as a title holder.
Yeah.
So in that case, we'll form an LLC, a separate LLC. Our company's the single member of it. And one per client. We don't reuse them.
Right.
So we have an inventory of LLCs, if you will. It's kind of interesting. And we'll take title to that property on their behalf as their title holder. Okay, imagine that for a second. So we're delaying them taking title to give the sale a chance to close. Now, they still have 180 days. That doesn't change.
180 days.
So now you have 180 days to get the sale
To make sure
closed.
that sale closes.
Correct. So when we have that conversation, I have them conversation with Nicole and say, Nicole, what is the days on market on that sale? What do you think? I mean, it's not a guarantee, but give us an idea, a realistic idea based on what the market's doing, how long it's going to take to get that thing sold. Because that's got to be part of the conversation.
Because when that timeline expires, poof, you're done.
You're done. And here's the thing. A reverse exchange that fails, meaning you didn't sell first, doesn't cause a taxable event, though. It just means that you didn't close on the sale within 180 days of that purchase. You can still do another 1031 on that sale, but you have to buy a different property.
A different property, exactly, right.
Exactly.
Yes.
So that's what trips people up.
Because then you could just do the forward, regular, reverse, find something else. Now you have a house that you paid for, you were hoping to get reimbursed.
Now you bought two houses now.
Now you have,
so I tell them there's now you have two incomes.
Yeah.
They didn't maybe want that though, right? So that's why I love having the conversation as early as possible. When somebody's thinking of selling or buying, that's when the best time to have the conversation about a 1031, if it's even something that's would work for them.
Right.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. But that's one example of that. Another easy example would be somebody closed and then called me. That happens almost every month, if not more times in a month.
They closed and then called you. What triggered them to think to call you?
Because
someone told them, or they thought that you would be called after? Like they just got misinformation from the beginning, or someone told them, uncle said, you idiot, why didn't you call this guy? You should have done a 1031 exchange. And he was like, I didn't know what that was.
I will tell you all of the above and more.
Yeah.
We've been sitting at a closing table one time, and the buyer says to the seller, how come you're not doing an exchange? The buyer said that to the seller. Now they have no benefit to help the seller.
The buyer said that to the seller.
I've had that happen before, Or other people were like, wait a minute, holy mackerel, I didn't think about this. My accountant just told me the tax bill is going to be 6 figures or high 5 figures or some big number.
People not playing accordingly. That is just mind-blowing to me.
Yeah, I'm just, but because in the heat of the battle, so to speak, all that going on, a lot of variables and stuff like that, they don't think about it. And then they go, oh, that's okay. I did a research on the internet and I have 45 days, right, to find something. I just had that happen last week. Yeah. It happens all the time with us. And I don't like turning people down with that, but the rules are the rules.
You do.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Touch money, pay tax, basically. So now there's investments they can make that might have some advanced appreciation, that big, beautiful bill that came out and all that stuff. But I tell them, go to the CPA on that stuff. Because that's
where does touch money become like, okay, so how can I say this?
Yeah, go ahead.
Like, let's say at that closing table, that seller's been informed by the buyer and he's like, oh my God. And they signed the settlement statement, title company still holding the money, doesn't wire it to Jose seller. Is there any saving grace that can happen in the nick of time with things?
Great question. And we do get asked that question. It's a common thing, right? Don't wire the money.
That's what I'm saying. Can you potentially be like, Drew, listen, we got a problem. Like we need to get this stuff set up real quick. Yeah. The title company's still holding the money. We effectively closed, but they haven't given it to me. It's still chilling there in their escrow account.
Technically, we could still do it as long as they didn't wire the money.
Okay. All right, cool.
And that's the good question on that. And that requires, work with the title company and the realtors involved and the other side involved. There's some documentation has to be put out there. They have to sign. But if there's been a good working relationship with everybody, usually not a problem. We've been called at the closing table. Yeah. I can tell you that. You're right. It happens. So we're always ready to turn things around because you never know. Yeah. You never know.
Very cool.
Yeah, especially the end of the month sometimes there's like a rush.
Yeah. So, no, it's interesting. Listen, the implications are big.
Exactly right.
So what is your role? You were talking about how, you educate, you have a conversation, you kind of look through. As a qualified intermediary, you spoke about that. Anything else you want to touch on as far as like your role in
Sure.
that?
So if you think about it, working with an intermediary is a similar structure to like a title company. You have somebody on board, somebody who talks about the logistics and maybe a post-closure type thing. Not exactly, but close to that. So in our case, in my company, I'm the strategy guy. So I have the conversation with the clients, educate them, strategy stuff. I call them options and strategies calls. Let's have that conversation. Usually about 15 minutes, sometimes longer. The one this morning was 45 minutes. Guy had a lot of questions. All of a sudden, he had all these other properties he didn't realize that he can do stuff with. So that was actually a great conversation, right? But usually it's 15 minutes, something like that, to have that kind of strategy call. And then my team of coordinators, they'll do the work of the documents. They'll collect the data that we need, the documents we need from the closing agent, and facilitate the logistics and documents, basically, right? And then we all work as a team, because if some question that comes up, I want them coming to me and vice versa. So there's that equal balance of who does what. And we clearly communicate that to the clients because they've never done this before. So we're always in education mode. Our documents are all about educating them.
Right.
Like, for example, we'll send out we call a 1031 guide and engagement letter, which is exactly what it is. It guides them, backs up what we talked about with the deadlines, the strategies, and all that kind of stuff. But also, it's an engagement letter. Say, hey, we want to use you as an intermediary. Right. So it's a clear back and forth, easy understanding, no fine print type conversation. So that's kind of the role. And I do training classes for realtors and attorneys and stuff like that, but also with clients. And that's most of my day, really. Yeah.
So you can exchange a property for another property. There's also things where you can exchange the property and put it in something like a DST or some other REIT of sorts of, what you guys work in that space as the intermediary as well to then bring it to that fund, or is that?
No, it's funny you say that. So we are still staying as intermediary. That's our role. We can't be anything else for the client. But at that point in time, you mentioned DST, a Delaware Statutory Trust is what that is. You have to be a securities licensed person to sell that, right? And you have to have certain sponsorship agreements to sell that with your broker dealer. But because we do training classes with companies that do that, right? We'll make recommendations to that when somebody feels a need or think it's a need for them. Here's how it would play out. Somebody says, I know I have to buy another property.
I don't want to be a landlord.
I don't want to be a landlord anymore. I'm sick of it.
Yeah.
And, but I don't want to pay the taxes. So I start hearing things like that. A Delaware Statutory Trust is basically a certain type of a trust that a company will buy a portfolio of properties in a certain asset class, like a bunch of multifamilies or a bunch of self-storage facilities or something like that. And they'll put it into that kind of a trust. They'll get it approved by the SEC to sell pieces of the trust to accredited investors. Fortunately, realtors can't benefit from that, or anybody outside of the broker-dealer can, but it can save an exchange, right? It can save a solution for somebody only if it makes sense to them. So we don't promote that or push that unless a client looks like they need it. Remember, we're educational. I'm not selling them on one way or another. Yeah. But at the same time, if it comes up and the conversation's there, then we'll talk to them about that. Some of them ask us about it nowadays because they do research.
No, I didn't think you were like the special, at all touched it. I wasn't sure if you guys would still function as an intermediary.
Oh, definitely.
So if they were choosing to do that DST, then your title company closes on the home they sold, sends to you guys to hold. Then he says, all right, I'm going to be buying a share of this DST. And you guys you're still functioning as an intermediary in that.
Great question.
It's not that they have their own obviously. No,
I got you. Yeah. No, but a great question. I'm glad you asked that because people don't realize that a DST is just like buying another property.
Right.
So that to us, it doesn't matter what they buy.
Could be a holding pattern for someone if they're just like, I don't want to buy another property. And then you could potentially take it from the DST and buy the property until you end up selling and closing and moving on and paying the tax. And
you hit it on the head. It's basically a solution like any other solutions you would have and stuff like that. When it works well. It's not for everybody.
It's not for everyone. Everyone has,
but at the end of the day, when they tell us that they're doing that, we just get the closing agent information just like any other transaction. We transact. They tend to go a lot faster than a regular closing because there's no due diligence period. As soon as they're ready to go, they go, I want to invest in this or this. Exactly.
Yeah. Very interesting. So we'll wrap this up with any like horror stories or mistakes or like crazy situations through your years of doing this where something just kind of went wrong because they didn't know? And
yeah, it's fair enough. I mean, there's plenty of those. What we like to try to do is find a solution, not to just say you can't do it, right? So there's obviously some boundaries we can't cross. You close, it's too late, right? Some interesting things happen though towards the end of the year. Some people think, oh, well, do I have to get this in by the December 31st deadline, right? Like a lot of things I have to invest or do my charitable donations or something like that. We don't have that issue with the 1031 space, but we do have an interesting strategy at the end of the year that can turn a negative into a positive, right? Is let's say somebody is not sure they want to do the exchange. They don't want to do a DST. They don't want to do real estate at all. They're done. Mm-hmm. They're done. Okay. And it's, let's say, November of the year, right? So November 15th, let's call it. Well, one thing they could do is start the exchange and let the 45 days run, because they can't stop the exchange. They have to let it run 45 days, right? But if, let's say they get to the 45th day, which is the first week in January, right? And they say, you know what, I'm not going to find anything. Here's an email. Please send the funds back to so-and-so to us. We know we're going to pay the taxes. Mm-hmm. What's interesting about turning a negative into positive is, meaning paying the taxes, is if that happens at that time of year, which we just had this happen.
You can plan.
Well, they get the money back, touch money in the next year, which means the taxes aren't due for another year.
Right.
So even though they didn't finish the exchange,
right.
they bought themselves another year and a quarter or year and a half or longer, depends on when they actually file their tax return, right? So there's a strategy there of taking a negative into a positive type thing without forcing them to have to buy something if they're not really wanting to.
Right.
But there's a couple of times people will come to us and they'll say, well, how do they know about the 45th day? I go, well, they're timestamped. Well, what if I just send it to you after that? What if I change my mind? What if I have these 3 properties I put in there? Because there's a whole strategy about identifying. But just to keep it simple, I put 3 properties down and all of them fall apart. Mm-hmm. And it's the 50th day. Can't change the list. You're stuck. You either close on what's on the list, which at that point, if they sold to somebody else, they're not closable in effect, right? Or you have to wait till the 180th day to get the funds back. You can't do anything else with it. And some people come to us and try to push us to say, well, just accept my form after the 45th day. I'm like, we're not willing to do that. So
so if the 45th day passes, and that happened like you're saying, then you have to wait till 180 days to get the money released.
Correct.
But if the 45th day doesn't pass and you don't identify any properties and you say, never mind, I'm done, just give it back and I'll pay the taxes, they can be released before the 45th day.
They released after the 45th.
After the 45th day. But you have to have made that determination before the 45th day.
If you identify even one property.
Oh, okay, right.
Now you're locked in.
You've locked in and identified. Yes. Okay.
So here's how we handle that, just to kind of finish on a positive note, because this is a real world stuff happens like that. We'll tell them that you're going to know by that week of the 45th day, right? You're going to know ahead of time. You're not going to know midnight on a Sunday if the 45th day is Sunday. Mm-hmm. You're going to know if you found something by then, right? I'll tell them if that's the case, don't push it. You know, don't feel rushed. There's no advantage to just filling out a form and give us a list of properties, okay? Mm-hmm. These properties have to be something that you want to close on. And if you have 3 and you only want to buy 1 that gives you 2 backups, any one of the 3 got to be able to close. So don't just put addresses on a form and saying, well, I filled out the form. There's no advantage there. In fact, that could hurt them.
Right.
So I tell them, if you get to that point, and we'll have this proactive conversation with you as well, we go all in the same conversation there and strategy, then bail on the exchange. Don't identify anything. Now, do I like them to do that? No. But I want them locked in arbitrarily for another 135 days?
Right.
No, I don't like that. There's nothing I can do with that rule. So we proactively recommend them not do that.
So let me ask you this real quick technical question with the identifying. So if, let's say, somebody found a property and put it under contract on day 15, what qualifies as identifying from the days? Like, if it's under contract, then that's automatically the date it was identified?
Great question.
Like that's time-stamped? Or could you potentially put a property under contract, it go into disaster war zone and problems happen, and then by 44th day, you're like, shoot, this didn't close, it's not going to close. Can you then come on the 45th day and be like, I identified a property, and then they see your contract was dated 25 days before? Does that make sense?
It totally makes sense. And here's the reality. Contract dates are irrelevant to a 1031.
Okay, so just the
So-
identification to them in the form of
when you identify to the intermediary, if we're handling it, for example,
right.
when we're identified through email, which is typically what it is, used to be faxes right back in the day, but email now is it. A closing on a property before the 45th day is also identification, right? If we've
Right.
sent money that you
Yeah.
told us to send for that, then that's part of it, right, too. But to your point, you can change that list as much as you want to the 45th day. In fact, I tell them, don't rush to get us the list.
Yeah.
Send it when you're ready. There's no advantage to getting in early, right? So you're ready when you're ready. Now, we do recommend it be under contract because then you have some kind of control with the seller, right?
Right.
So,
But at least I know that if you did put it under contract and then, shit hit the fan and you can't close, that you didn't formally identify it yet because, And I guess I was going to also say, that's why also what I suggest, and I've worked with sellers over the years, we've waited, we've like pushed the closing of the sale. So, we've worked with people who've literally been like, oh yeah, we're good. We're good if we have a 3-month closing. So then that gives the seller a little bit more time to potentially get something. So it's 45 days from the day you closed, right?
Correct.
So if the sale, if you close in 30 days and then yes, you have 45 days, that's a different story. But if your buyer's willing to, wait a little longer, that, because it's hard to identify the right property.
Exactly.
Sometimes it's not that easy. And when you do your due diligence and stuff, then things don't go right. And it's not that easy. So
I'll tell
I
you
think
what,
doing the timing, playing a little bit with the timing is helpful too.
we're again on the same page. I recommend, just to kind of tie this together, I recommend that you sell and buy at the same time. Mm-hmm. Think about it. So you're matching your sales cycle with your purchase cycle. So buyer's market, seller's market, whatever it is, whatever you're in at that moment, you're going to adjust those timeframes accordingly, right? And to your point, we've had people wait to list a property until they find a purchase.
Right.
And vice versa.
That's what we've done. Yeah, we've waited to list it until
Makes
they
sense.
found something. Exactly.
Yeah, don't.
Because we knew, and then worst case scenario, if you need to get that time, done, then okay, you drop the price, you get it moving, and you can potentially sell it. So a lot of different techniques there to try.
No, I love it, and that's what's interesting about the real world too. I mean, you can give the rules, in text and know the rules, but working them, you might not know that, right?
Yeah.
And when we explain it, it makes sense. But what if the buyer's not cooperating or the seller's not cooperating? You have to deal with
things
that
happen.
too. So you want time, and so I tell people this: you can't change the deadlines once it starts,
right?
But you control when it starts.
When it starts, exactly,
and that's the key. And if you take that to whatever the market's doing, seller buyer's market. It really is a good guide, even though sometimes kind of be a pain and kind of annoying to try to make that work with things you can't control. But at least going into it, you can control when it starts. So you're not pressure. Right. A lot of times people tell me I've done exchanges before and that 45 days is not enough time. I go, I know. But you control when it starts. Don't put yourself in that if you can't help it. And people are resonating. A lot of our exchanges now are done in less than 60 days. And I tell them I'd do it in a week if I was doing this myself. No, because it's like dominoes. I want them to fall into place, right?
Well, you also don't want something to derail something else. So,
Exactly.
While you are potentially extending that closing, other things can happen with long closings.
Exactly
It's like that balance of like, you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't. Like, where are you in the middle there? So, yeah.
I love it.
I appreciate you joining me. This was great. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Guys, Drew Monaghan, where can they find you? Give him a website or a phone number if you guys have any questions. If you need to utilize his services, let him know.
Cool. Thank you so much. So our company phone number is 754-600-1031.
Oh, nice.
Website, peg1031.com. So private exchange group, PEG1031.com. And our office will definitely help out wherever they need help. If they need guidance, they're going to put them right in touch with me.
Amazing. Thank you so much for joining us. Everyone out there, thank you so much for joining us. I hope that this was informative. If you got any nuggets out of it, think of anyone that you know who might value and benefit from the information. Please forward and share this information. Leave us a review and please join us for the next session. And thank you for joining the... Okay, one more time. Awesome. Thank you so much, Drew, for joining me here. This was amazing. Everyone out there, thank you for joining us. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out to him. And I welcome any questions to myself as well. This has been Real Estate, Real and Unscripted with Nicole. And I look forward to seeing you guys on the next one. Have a great day.
Avoiding your unfinished home projects because you're not sure where to start? Thumbtack knows homes, so you don't have to. Don't know the difference between matte paint finish and satin? Or what that clunking sound from your dryer is? With Thumbtack, you don't have to be a home pro. You just have to hire one. You can hire top-rated pros, see price estimates, and read reviews, all on the app. Download today.